So in this tutorial for normal map baking, we're going to be looking at using control points to in your low poly mesh to control how to avoid distortion and things like that. So if you open up this scene, TA normal test control points, you'll see in the scene we've got a box here and we've got our high poly mesh here. So let's just load up our UVs. So you can see we've got a kind of standard box unwrap for this. So the first thing we need to do is drag this straight onto our high poly, so they've got to line up, and then we're going to call the material TA box low matte, and we'll call the box is already called low poly, so that's fine. Okay, so if we load up transfer maps, I've got it as a shortcut here, but remember if you go to rendering transfer maps, you can do that from within here as well. Okay, so we'll clear all on these and we'll add our low poly here, and in all other meshes we'll add in high poly, like so. Now remember we're going to need to check the cage and make sure that's encompassing the entire model, which it isn't at the moment. So just select this to envelope, select the red envelope here, and I'm just going to go to face mode and just drag this above the little bits that are sticking out on the high poly. So now the entire high poly, well, it's not the case there either. There we go, so that should do it. So the entire high poly is encased in our cage. Okay, so we'll remove this normal and we'll add in a new one. And we're going to bake it JPEG. Remember, obviously, when you finish, to switch back to something sensible, like a TGA, so something that's 32-bit. We'll call this TA box N. And I've already got a project set up. So I've got all my images here. So I'm just going to save this in source images here. Great. Okay, so tangent space, we know we want to work in tangent space for now, although it is useful to do an object space one as well if you're using something like endo. So on our output we'll leave it at 1024, but we'll bake at low res. And we'll leave everything else as is, but in advanced options make sure you've got delete envelopes on bake ticked off. Otherwise we'll have to redo this envelope every time. Right, so that's ready to try, so let's just hit bake. We'll select our low poly and have a look. Now straight away we can see there's problems with this. So you can see how the bolts are pointing inwards here, here, here and here. And also some of our nice kind of bevels on our high poly are not coming out very well. Now we've had this problem before with these edges, and if you remember how we solved them, it was by setting up our smoothing groups. Now we are just going to use the script for this for now, but all the script does is select all the edges that aren't attached to a face, all the open seams, and sets them to harden. Now the other problem is this error here, and let's just have a look at our normal map to see what that's doing. So you can see what's happening here. You see the way the bolt is here, but it actually looks like it's being pulled inwards rather than being a nice kind of flat taper in like we have here. Now the reason that's happening is because of the normal of the face is so stretched. So because this curve is this is just a right angle, the normals are pointing out and trying to figure that out just based on that really sharp angle. So one way to solve this is to actually cut in some more geometry and line this up to where you have these details. So let's just try that. So what I want you to do is go to face mode, hold shift, right click and go to extrude face, and make sure your thickness is on 0 and your offset is something a bit higher, something like 20. Then go to scale mode and just scale that roughly in. So you can see it's knackered up our UVs, but that's fine, we can easily amend that in a second. So now look, we've actually got 4 new points to play with in our model, and we're going to use those to line up. These are control vertices basically, so we can line these up to where that detail is. So I'm just going to use F9 on my keyboard to go to vertex mode, select a vert, and just roughly position these in the center of our model detail. It's worth quickly checking that you have the model still nice and flat, which it is here, so it's all still nice and lined up. So now, once we've changed the UVs, when we bake, having these extra control points will allow the normal of the face to point up and create that proper taper. So luckily this is a nice easy unwrap. We should be able to just pull that in. And what I could do, I have done it a bit roughly there, so I've just kind of guesstimated it a little bit. Remember, you can use bonus tools, rendering, assign checker shader, and you can get it perfectly lined up with this. Or your other option would be just to planar planar project on this. I might just quickly try that as well, but no, that's not going to work. So we'll try just planar projecting on this instead. I know it's from the y-axis, so let's hammer that down. You can see now that's going to fit perfectly in that gap. I will need to check which edges are lined up to which. And yeah, that looks fine. So we can just try going polygons, move and so, and then polygons, move and so. And we'll chuck that back in there. There we go, that's perfectly unwrapped now. Okay, so we'll reassign our material, delete our history, and slap this back over the top. So let's try baking that out again. It's using exactly the same settings. Will be worth checking, make sure. Oh, it's done that again. So see how it's got rid of that. Let's head that one in and make sure that's right. But okay, the bake's actually worked pretty well anyway. So we can see our normal bake now for these top bits is working much better than it was before. So if we check our normal map, we can see that's really kind of nice now. Okay, so we're still getting a couple of problems around these edges here. So there's a couple of things we can try for this. Like, this edge is attached to that, so that should be a nice soft edge. And you can see that's not at the moment, so let's just soften these edges. And what about the one on this side? That's also got a problem, yeah, so we'll do that one too, so soften that edge. We'll drag that back in, go back to transfer maps and bake. Okay, so that's looking better now, and that's looking better now. In fact, they're all looking spot on, but we do have an error up here. And that's probably for the same reason that we were getting this error before, and that you do need some control edges. So let's try sticking a control edge in down here. Drag that back over and reload transfer maps and hit bake. And there we go, you can see now our bake is pretty much flawless. So what have we learned from this lesson then? Well, if you have any kind of large faces that kind of connect to right angles and other bits, it's really useful to have control edges in your normal map to avoid this kind of distortion and to stop errors on bits like we had over here and stuff like that. Now the other thing we've learned as well is that controlling your hard and soft edges is really important, and a classic way to deal with that is by using this script, which will assign any kind of open edge a hard edge, which is great, but sometimes you will need to go in and tweak that afterwards as well to get it kind of just right. So yeah, that's that lesson done.